All right, guys, on the table, the PX4 Storm Compact in all FDE. Now, interestingly enough, this gun has been around for quite a while. Now, its original date of birth was in 2004 when this gun was created. And when this gun first came out, I don't know if it really received a warm reception. I think a lot of people were kind of taken aback by the looks of the handgun. However, having spent about a week with this gun right now, and just as kind of a side note, this gun hasn't been shot yet. It's actually going to be out tomorrow. So if you guys are going to complain that I didn't shoot the gun, why should you watch it? You're going to have to wait for tomorrow. Like I said, I want to do an overview first so that people understand that when you get this gun out of the box, there are some things about this gun that might appeal to you, but also might absolutely make you hate this gun from the get-go. And one of those things is going to be the look. And a lot of people, when they take a look at this gun, they're like, Jesus, this thing is, I don't know. I mean, some people may say it's absolutely ugly. Some might say it's ugly and chunky and blocky. Kind of looks like a hair dryer, kind of looks like a high point. I mean, whatever you want to call it. But honestly, after spending some time with this gun, I have to say it actually is a very nice looking gun. I actually like the way it looks. It reminds me a lot of a sort of like a futuristic gun that has a little bit of a retro feel to it. And what I mean by that is that it looks very stylish in almost like a European sense. And if that makes sense to you, then you know what I'm talking about. But because it is, a Beretta and it is an Italian manufacturer, it kind of gives you a little bit of that Italian flair. Again, what that means to you, I don't know. But I think it definitely has that feel and look to it, which I think is actually unique, but also kind of cool at the same time. And obviously, Beretta doesn't necessarily really care what people think about how they look. And that's probably why they developed the APX, because a lot of people would agree it's a solid gun, even with those really weird slide serrations that almost look like pillars. But in regards to PX4, there are some unique features to this gun. As many of you are aware, this is a gun that does have a rotating barrel. And the rotating barrel is kind of cool. I've never actually shot a gun with a rotating barrel. And I think for me, this is going to be kind of an interesting thing because I've heard a lot of good positive things about it. And I am super excited to take this to the range tomorrow. Now, in regards to some of the other features, there were actually several different variations of this model when it was introduced. And over time, it was actually expanded. So initially, you had some like C, D, and the F and the G models. You also have a subcompact in this, which is a little bit different because it does not have the rotating barrel. Now, in regards to the variations, the Type C and the Type D had no decockers, no safeties, and they both had spurless hammers. But the Type C was actually a single action only. They call it their constant action trigger. And then, of course, the Type D, which was the double action only, which had the same characteristics of the single action, just with the fact that it was double action only as opposed to single action only. Those I found were mostly distributed to law enforcement agencies, especially the D model. And I've only seen one out in the wild, and it was a used gun in a 40 cal, which was kind of interesting. It was a Type D, but the 40 cal is the reason why I didn't pick it up. Had it been a 9, I might have considered buying it because it was really at a very dirt cheap price. Now, the most common variation of this handgun is actually the F model, which this is right here, where it is a double action, single action, and you have the safety / decocker right here. The G model, which is basically the same exact thing, the only difference is that there is no safety. It is decock only. Now, the interesting thing about this handgun, which has already been done to mine, I have actually converted this very easily from an F model to a G model. So instead of this going down and staying down, it springs back up. So how that would work, and the gun is safety checked, is once your hammer is all the way back, ready to go single action, you just have to push down on the lever. If this was still in the G model, it would stay right there, and you'd have to manually operate it out of safe mode. In this case, it snaps back out, which means the gun is ready to be fired. So that was one of the first things I decided to do. And honestly, if you choose to go with this gun, I would highly recommend that fact. I just think it makes the gun a little bit more usable, especially as a carry tool. That way you don't have to necessarily worry about or remember flicking that safety off. And you don't necessarily have to worry about accidentally activating that safety, which I don't know if you would do it, but better to be safe than sorry, right? So right now it's in G mode. It is a decock only, and it took about 10 minutes to do that. Just want to say thanks to Mr. Guns and Gear for posting his video, although we don't know each other personally. I did watch that video, and it was very helpful because that's how I was able to convert this. So thank you for that video. Now, in regards to the features of the handgun, everything is pretty much ambi, which is very nice. You have your ambi controls here on your slide stop, slide release, both sides. You also have your decocker or safety decocker here on both sides. And your magazine release is actually transferable to the other side. So even though it's not fully ambi, it can be switched over to that side, which is, that's fine. That's perfect. Now, in regards to some of the good features about it, aside from the nice, smooth rotating barrel and the action of the handgun, one of the things that I did notice about most of this stuff out of the box was the double action was very heavy. It was coming in almost 12 pounds, and the single action was over 8 pounds. So that was a very heavy double action, single action pull. As a matter of fact, it was something that I wasn't necessarily too fond of. So again, based on the fact that this is my handgun and I'm going to do what I want, I decided to go out and pay for a $16 hammer spring, and it's a Beretta Cougar D spring. And all you do is pull out the spring, put the new one in, and now you're going to find that your double action is coming in slightly over 8 pounds, and your single action now is slightly over 4 pounds, which to me, that makes that in the ideal area of where I personally feel comfortable carrying a double single action gun. It makes the trigger a lot easier to use, a lot more manageable in regards to getting those shots off and being, reliable in regards to hitting your target. So in regards to the double action, if let's say we decock it, it's in full double action, again, what you're going to find is that it is a very smooth take-up. Now, without that spring being in, there'd be a lot more shaking in my hand, and you guys know that. But because I put that spring in, it's very easy to get that double action to break. The single action, right about there. Okay, so you have your single action right there, and you have some take-up after that. But once you hit that wall, it just is smooth as glass. Very nice take-up. It is a very good feeling handgun. So we'll see how that operates tomorrow at the range, but so far I've been very, very satisfied with the way the trigger feels. It is a very natural feeling trigger. As a matter of fact, it is as good as my P01 is. And honestly, I'm gonna cause some controversy. The single action on this Beretta PX4 is actually better than on my P01. And I do have a couple of springs changed out in this, and only one spring changed out of this one. So ultimately, if I was going to push these or pull them side by side, I'm going to say right now that Beretta PX4 is a little bit smoother, a little bit lighter, and the brakes feel about the same. Let's see if I can do that. There we go. The reset, about the same, and the take up on both is about the same. And the brake feels just maybe a little crisper, but about the same. I mean, I really think that this PX4 is fairly good in regards to being right out of the box ready. Again, you just get that $16 spring. I've seen it for $19. I think it's extremely manageable, but overall, this gun rocks. I mean, at this point, very happy with the handgun. Now, let's talk about some of the things that I found about this gun that maybe may turn people off in regards to buying it. First off, in spite of its looks, it's actually a fairly ergonomic pistol. Now, again, does it sit very low in your hand? It may not. Honestly, guys, I think it's more of an illusion because of the way they cut out the back here. I mean, keep in mind, everything is very rounded on this handgun. There are really no sharp edges. The sharpest edge that I found are on the sights and on these levers here and on these levers there. But other than that, everything is nice and rounded off. There's real no snaggability with the exception of maybe the decocking levers or even these, really the slide lock levers. But overall, everything is very rounded, very nicely smoothened out. But one of the things that people would say is that the gun rides pretty high in your hand. And, it seems like that might be the case. But for whatever reason, when my hand gets on this gun, and I'll see if I can show it to you there, it doesn't really feel like it's that high. When I shot a SIG P320, that felt very high in my hand. This one does not. And I'm not exactly sure why that is. I don't know if it's because of the way it's been rounded off in the back here. Maybe it's just the way the beaver tail sits in my hand. It could be a number of things, but for whatever reason, it doesn't feel unnaturally high, which is one thing I did find out about the P320. I always felt that gun sat way too high in your hand, but I feel for whatever reason, maybe you're getting a little bit further in underneath the slide. It doesn't really necessarily feel like that with this particular handgun. Again, that's just my personal opinion. Now, in regards to some of the things that I didn't like about this handgun, and really these are minor things. The first thing I'm not sure about is why Beretta has to make everything so complicated in regards to some of the easiest things. Now, removing the slide from the chassis is not that hard. Basically, what you're doing, again, you're pushing these two levers down, and this, oops, let me do that again, and the slide comes right off. I mean, that's really easy to do, guys. That's not a hard time. That's very simple. Changing out this to decocking was super easy, but then you get to switching out the back straps. And I don't know, man, can they not figure out an easier way to do this? So basically you have to take a little screwdriver and kind of jimmy it under this little metal bar here. And then you've got to pry it out, pry it out, pry it out until you can pull the whole thing out. I don't know. Could that be done easier? I think so, because even when you're trying to get this back strap off, it's a pain in the ass. I'll be honest with you. And a lot of times you have to use a screwdriver just to get a little bit of bite in there just to snap it off. I think they could have done that a little bit easier. In regards to switching out the hammer spring, that was super easy to do. It just seems like this, I don't know what they were thinking, but I think they could have definitely done it in easier fashion. The other major complaint I have is the texturing or lack thereof. Now, you obviously have some rear texturing here and some front texturing there as well. My only thing is I wish they would have actually carried this up a little bit higher here, because let's be honest, a lot of times when that gun is flicking off in your hand, it's because of lack of traction back here and on the front. So the front is fairly covered well, but that rear just gives a little too much open, smooth area. So I really wish they would have given you a little bit more of a bite kind of coming around here. Also, there's not much texture on the sides, so that could be problematic, especially for your support hand when you're really just trying to, get a good bite on that, and ultimately it's slipping. Why? Because, well, there's no texturing there. That could be easily solved with some, Talon grips, traction grips, sandpaper pistol grips if he made them. Unfortunately, he doesn't. Come on, Ben, make them for me, buddy. But, overall, I think that's where that improvement could be. Maybe a slightly more texturing on the side, and maybe following up a little bit higher on the grip. Now, again, I don't know if that's ever going to happen. Now, around that time of about, I got to think about this now. I think it was around, I want to say 2014. Don't quote me on that, but I think around 2014, they came out with something called the Compact Carry. Actually, 2016, Compact Carry came out. That was Langdon Tactical's, jazzed up PX4 Storm Compact, where they did a trigger group and that's not the sights. So, there were some major improvements made, but I think the biggest problem that I have with this handgun is I think the pricing of this handgun is extremely unreasonable. And I say that for a couple of reasons. First off, this gun, was originally introduced in 2004. So it's a 15-year-old model. And over the 15 years that this gun has been around, you have not seen any massive updates. Again, the only thing you've seen is in 2016, they came out with that Langdon Tactical, and that gun is MSRPing for about $800. Now, I like this gun a lot, but there's no way I'm paying $800 for it. I don't care if it comes with traction grips. I don't care if it comes with a trigger kit, some night sights. I don't care. I just don't necessarily think that gun is worth $800. So the goal then would be to buy something that's on the cheap and seeing if you can actually make it into a more usable carry gun that kind of meets your needs in the range of let's say a compact carry. So like I said, for $16, I was able to get the double and single action down already. So that's pretty good. But I think overall, Beretta definitely has dropped the ball in regards to the pricing on this. If you look online, depending on what you're looking for, if you get an all black model, they're still, charging almost $450, $500 in that range. Sometimes you can find them cheaper on an auction. This gun cost me in the $460, I think it was $469 I got this gun for, which was really good, but it was on sale at that time. But even these FDE models are commanding around $600 just because of the all FDE model. Now they have a gray frame with the black slide and also the black on black. But, again, those prices I think are a little bit too high in the market, especially for where it is now, and especially for the real lack of demand on this firearm. Again, there's a lot of people who are very faithful to this gun, and so far I've been very pleased with it. But at the same time, I don't know if you can get a huge demand on a gun that, in my opinion, is about $150, maybe sometimes $200 overpriced. But that's just something that I personally feel about it. Some of the other weird kind of inconsistencies is the framework. You can see that on the seams of the frame or the molding, they didn't really smoothen any of this out. And that's not a big deal. It's more, like I said, an aesthetic issue. But again, for a gun that's a fairly expensive gun, I really think they should have finished that up a little bit better. But again, that's just a minor detail. It is not something that should at all by any means tell you that this gun is a piece of crap, because the gun is not. The gun is a very, very, very solidly built gun. I think also, just on a negative side, I think Beretta kind of gave up on this handgun. And what I mean by that is there really is not a lot of aftermarket development. Langdon Tactical right now has a ton of stuff on their website for it, but so does the Beretta website. And again, even the parts to change out are fairly expensive. $100 for a trigger kit, $100 for night sights from Ameriglow. I think these right here to get the more stealth ones are, I think, $30. So there isn't a huge market for a lot of stuff to do with this handgun, which I think is really a fault of Berettas in general. They came out with the gun. Maybe it didn't do as well as they thought it would. And unfortunately, I really think they gave up on this gun. And honestly, this gun is actually a pretty solid one so far. Again, tomorrow I'll do the post tabletop, which will be the shooting review, and then I'll see what it does then. But overall, guys, really, really impressed with what I'm seeing out of the box. So I'd love to hear what you have to say about the Beretta PX4. What's your experience with them? Do you like them? Do you not like them? Why or why not? I think it's going to be an interesting conversation because, again, I'm pretty happy with what I'm seeing on this gun. And I'd love to hear what you guys have to say, especially for those of you who have owned this gun for a while and have a lot of experience with it. So I hope you guys have a great night. Stay safe. Check out the video tomorrow with the post review. And, hopefully you guys are going to be good tonight and not do anything crazy. I don't know, maybe you will. As always, stay safe, and freedom is never free.